Let's start our discussion now, Jivansi.
We can start. I'm ready.
Okay. So I hope static routing configuration concept is clear for you. Static routing. Now we can focus on default routing concept. So in this scenario, we can use default routing. In this scenario, we can use default routing. For example, if you have a building, okay, in a building you have multiple floor, and on each floor you have routers. For example, R1, R2, and R3. Okay, we have a building. Okay, on each floor we have a router. So we have a connectivity here into this design. For example, we are using static routing configuration. Okay, for example, we are only familiar with static routing concept. So they all can communicate. We are using static routing into this design. Now, now in case if this building network, I want to connect with internet. I want to connect with internet cloud. Then what we can do? We can connect cable from this R3 router. We can connect a cable to nearest ISP gateway router. For example, this is ISP gateway router. ISP will connect his connection with your R3 router. And what you can do, if you are familiar with static routing only. So in the static routing, you need to create your destination network entry statically or manually. So from R3 towards ISP side, I don't want to create static entry for all internet traffic. It's not possible. To clear my
Mm.
point? Because on
I get your point.
because on internet side, we have million of IP addresses, and it's very difficult to create each destination network entry into this R3 router because maybe this router has a limited resources. It's very difficult to create a lots of entry because if you are familiar with static routing, what you need? IP route, remote network, destination network, mask, and gateway. Mask and gateway. Gateway is what? This next hop IP, no problem. This is next hop IP, but it's very difficult to create all internet destination network entry into this RC router. That's why into this scenario, what we are doing? Into this scenario, we can only configure towards this ISP router, we can only configure default route because internet is a unknown network for me. Internet is an
Mm.
unknown network, unknown destination for me. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to configure default route towards ISP gateway. What is default route syntax? Route, IP route, any network 0.0.0,
000
then any mask 0.0.0.0, then next hop
000.
IP. For example, here we are using 99.99.99.10. So next hop IP is 99.99.99.10. Yes, this is syntax. This is default
Yes.
routing syntax, and it will work. This any destination, any mask, it will work.
Yes.
So
Okay.
towards ISP, always towards ISP, we need to configure default routing. UNC. Clear my point? Default
Yes, I
routing
get
towards
it.
ISP. So let's create a simple design and try to verify this 0.0.0 entry is working or not. So what I'm doing, I'm creating a simple design. Okay. This is my branch router, and this router I'm using as a ISP side gateway. Now in my branch router, yes, I have a small network. I have one switch, multiple computers. This portion is ISP side portion. Let me connect a cable. So
Okay.
this branch
Uh,
office, this is branch office. From this branch office, I'm adding a cable to ISP gateway. This is ISP gateway router. And we have multiple destination this side, and multiple destination this side. So this portion is a ISP side portion, this portion. And I don't want to create from this branch office. I don't want to create all destination network entry statically. That's why I'm using default routing. So this is my branch router. This is what my branch router, and this is what ISP
ISP, yes.
gateway, ISP gateway. Let's
Mm,
design IP address into this network. So 99.99.99 network. I'm using here this side. This is LAN portion. So 192.168.10.0 network slash 24. This is what 192.168.50.0 for example. And this interface is 192.168.60.0 slash 24. Now let's configure IP address as per design. Let's go to LAN machine. IP address 192.168.10.10 I'm using. 10.1 is a gateway. This IP address I will configure on router gigabit Ethernet 0/0 interface. Now 10.11 gateway is 10.1.
yeah, the gateway is one.
Yes, now this side is 60.10, 60.1 is a gateway. 60.1 I will configure on router interface. Now 60.11, 60.1. Now 50.10, 50.1. Now 50.11, 50.1. Let's configure IP address on routers. So let's go to
Mm,
this branch router. So in branch router, I can configure IP address on gigabit Ethernet 0/0. So host name is branch router. Now
yes.
interface gigabit Ethernet 0/1 IP address as per design.
Yes.
99.99.99.1 I'm using. Mask, no shutdown. Interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0 192.168. 10.1 subnet mask I'm using /24. Now show IP interface brief command you can use to verify your interface information. So these are interfaces. Let's go to ISP gateway router. And on ISP gateway router, we have three interfaces. So host name I'm using ISP gateway, just a name. Interface
Mm,
gigabit Ethernet 0/0, 99.99.99.2 mask, no shutdown. Now interface gigabit Ethernet 0/1, 192.168.60.1 mask, no shutdown. Now we have one more interface, gigabit Ethernet 0/0 and 0/2, and this side 192.168.50. No shutdown. Any problem in basic configuration?
no, no, no.
So you can verify
It's
IP
gonna.
information here. This is basic configuration, right? Now,
Yes.
from ISP router, my point is what from ISP router, I don't want to create all destination network entry statically. No, I don't want to create a
Okay.
static entry. This is ISP
Okay.
portion. I told you this is what ISP side portion. Okay, so
Yes.
I'm looking for default routing configuration. You can go to branch router and what is default routing syntax? IP route and syntax what any network
0000.
0.0 any mask 0.0
Any mask.
next hop
Like
IP 99.99.99.2. Now
yes.
for return traffic, we can go to ISP gateway and On ISP gateway, I'm configuring static routing. So to reach this 10.0 network, 10.0 network, next hop IP is 99.99.99. Done. Now, from this inside machine, I'm trying to initiate my traffic. Let's verify IP address configuration. So IP config 10.10 gateways 10.1. Now ping 192.168.60.60.10. So from this inside machine, I'm trying to verify my connectivity with 60.10. This traffic will go and hit on router device. Now this is L3 device. So whenever traffic will hit on router device, router will check his routing table. Router will check his routing table. Is there any entry available in my routing table to reach particular destination? So yes, in router, you have a default route entry. You can verify for any unknown destination. For any unknown destination, you can go via 99.99.99.2. And here we have entry with S asterisk. S is what? Static, and asterisk means what? Default. So this is static default routing configuration. So now,
Yes.
if I'm trying to initiate my traffic 60.10, you can verify now 60.10.
Not reachable.
No, I'm getting reply.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay.
Yes. First two packet lost because of ARP, right? ARP protocol. ARP is trying to verify the MAC address information. That's why first two packets are lost. Now you are getting reply 60.10. You are getting reply. You are trying to verify your connectivity with 50.10. So traffic is traveling. And you can also verify complete route with tracert command. With tracert command, you can verify your complete path. So I'm using tracert 192.168.50.10 to reach this destination. To reach this destination, we can go via ISP gateway router. See, traffic is going to move on this branch router. Now branch router, then traffic is going to ISP gateway router 99.2 and then going to destination. Clear this default routing configuration?
Very clear.
So now in static routing and in default routing, what is the benefit of the static routing? What is the benefit and what is the disadvantage of static routing? Let's talk about disadvantage first, okay, of static routing. If I have collection of router, if I have collection of routers, okay, into this design, I want to configure static routing, for example. Static routing, for example, into this design. So this is R1 router, for example. In static routing, this is directly going to network, this is directly going to network, this is directly going to network. You need to create entry for all these remote destination. This is a remote destination, remote destination, remote destination, remote destination. These are what? Remote destination. So the problem with the static routing is what? You need to create all destination network entry statically, manually.
Manually.
This is the disadvantage of static routing in a big network. If you are working in a small network, no problem. You can go with static routing. Okay.
Yes.
Now,
But
if
for the big network
yes,
problems.
but what is the feature? What is the benefit of static routing? What is the benefit of static routing? Wait. Before discuss static routing benefits, okay, let's talk about dynamic routing concept. Dynamic routing. So if you are using any dynamic routing protocol into this design, for example, into this design, you are using RIP protocol, for example, RIP protocol. RIP protocol. Okay, with this collection of routers, you are using the RIP protocol. Now, I want to introduce I want to introduce this router, this new router into this existing environment, into this existing network. I want to introduce a new router. If I'm not using dynamic routing method, if I'm using static routing, then you need to connect a cable first with the nearest router. You can configure one IP on this interface, one IP on this interface. And if you are working with static routing, so the problem is you need to create all destination network entry statically into this router, statically, manually. That's why in a big network, we are not using static routing. In a big network, we can go with dynamic routing concept. For example, if you are using RIP protocol or any dynamic routing protocol, RIP, EIGRP, and OSPF, if you are using RIP protocol, routing information protocol, then in RIP protocol or in any dynamic routing protocol, if you remember, we need to advertise only directly connected network information. Do you understand, right?
Yes.
In dynamic routing, no need to know what is the remote destination network. No, you required only you required only directly connected network information. You can advertise. And for example, this is R2 router, this is R3 router. So you can only advertise your directly connected network. This R3 is trying to advertise only these directly connected networks into the protocol, and automatically they will find the best route. Now, into this existing design, if I want to introduce this router into this existing design, it is very simple task. You can connect a cable first with any nearest router. You can configure IP address on this interface, IP address on this interface, IP address here. Now you need to advertise this network, this interface network into this respective protocol. Only you need to advertise this
Yeah.
network into this respective protocol. Automatically, you will get all information here, and this router information is available on each router automatically. This is the benefit of dynamic routing. This is the benefit of dynamic routing. Clear now my point, Jivansu? But
Very
what
clear.
is the disadvantage of dynamic routing into this design? What is the disadvantage of dynamic routing in case if this one is what? This one is a attacker or unauthorized person router. This is what
Yeah.
unauthorized person router. If you are using static routing into this design, if you are using static routing into this design, then if this is unauthorized router, yes, he can connect cable with any nearest router. But if you are using static routing into this design, then this unauthorized person need to know remote destination network information. If he has all remote destination network information, then he can create an entry statically. It's very difficult
Hmm.
task for unauthorized person. But if you are using for example, you are using RIP protocol here. So the problem, disadvantage of dynamic routing protocol is what? This unauthorized person, he can connect his cable, he can advertise his network in protocol, and automatically he has all information.
Yes.
That's why in dynamic routing, we are using a method is called authentication. We are using routing protocol authentication. In static routing, the benefit is what? We have a great security. Unauthorized person need to create all remote destination network entry statically. It is difficult task for unauthorized person if you don't know about the remote destination network information. But in dynamic routing, he can only advertise his directly connected network. That's why here into this dynamic routing method, we are using routing protocol authentication concept. What administrator can do? Administrator can implement authentication method, can implement authentication key on these collection of routers. authentication key. If this unauthorized person, if he required updates information, if he want to introduce this router into this existing design, it's required or he required same authentication key, same authentication method. You
Yes.
will clear my point? Same authentication
Yes, I
method.
get it. We can say with dynamic routing, the integration is very easy. It's very easy.
Yes. Concept is important. You need to know the concept, theoretical portion. Implementation is simple task. Implementation
Yes.
is simple task, and the problem with the problem with the dynamic routing is problem with the dynamic
Security.
routing is what? If any unauthorized person connect his router with any nearest router, he can configure IP address, he can advertise his interface network IP into protocol, and automatically he will get all the information.
Yeah.
That's why whenever you are using dynamic routing protocol, you need to configure routing protocol authentication concept, routing protocol. So today, let's talk about after static routing, after default routing discussion, let's talk about routing protocol authentication first. Okay, Juvency?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Now let's talk about, so this is our topic. This is our topic, routing protocol authentication. Routing protocol authentication. If you talk about authentication, we have two methods. We have two methods for routing protocol authentication. First, we can go with simple password authentication, or you can say clear text authentication, or you can go with MD5, MD5 authentication, or you can say encrypted authentication, simple password or MD5. Okay, RIP protocol, RIP, OSPF, they support simple password authentication method. They can also support MD5 authentication method, but EIGRP and BGP protocol, they only support encrypted authentication, or you can say MD5 authentication. Okay, so let's create a design.
MD5.
Let's
Yes.
create a design, and the rest we can discuss in our design. Okay, wait.
Today
Rest.
you are using packet tracer.
I'm using GNS3.
Genius.
GNS3 for all implementation. Packet tracer I'm not using. I'm using GNS3 because here I can capture live packet and I can show you all the packet information.
Okay.
So I have for routing protocol authentication, I'm using two routers. Okay,
Yeah.
IP address 10.1.12.0, and for roots, I'm creating loopback interfaces 1.1.1.1/32, 10.1, two loopbacks on each router. On R2, 2.2.2.2/32, 192.168.20.1/24. Let's configure IP address first, and as per design, I'm trying to advertise these routers in RIP protocol. Okay, these routers in RIP protocol. Wait. Interface fast Ethernet 0/0, 10.1.12.1 mask, no shutdown. Interface loopback 0, 1.1.1.1 mask. Let's create one more loopback 192.168, 10.1 mask. Now show IP interface brief. Now we can use RIP protocol, router RIP version 2. I'm using version 2. Why? Because RIP version 2 can support authentication. RIP version 2
Okay.
contains update via multicast address, right? RIP version
Okay.
2, RIP version 2 is a classless routing protocol. Now 10 dot, 1 dot, 12 dot, 0. Yes, we have two loopback. I'm trying to advertise 192, 168, 10 dot, 0. Remember RIP concept from seasonal trading? We'll discuss, okay? We'll
Yeah.
discuss what is RIP protocol, EIGRP, OSPI. We'll discuss, okay?
No problem.
No auto summary command. No auto summary command I'm using to disable auto summarization. What is summarization? What is auto summarization? What is manual summarization? Yes, we have a topic. We'll discuss what is auto summarization, what is manual summarization. But right now I'm using here no auto summary to disable auto summarization because RIP and AIGRP they do auto summarization by default. That's why I want to disable 0/0 10 dot 1 dot 12 dot 2 mask no shutdown interface loopback 0 2 dot 2 dot mask interface loopback 1 192 168 20 dot 1 mask. Now show IP interface brief. Let's configure a RIP protocol router RIP version 2 10 dot 1 dot 12 dot 0 network 2 dot 2 dot 2 dot 2 network 192 168 20 dot 0 no auto summary. Let's try to capture packets information here in between R1 and R2 and you can verify this packet information in Wireshark. You can verify multicast address information yes 224.0.0.9. If you expand this packet information you can see source IP multi-destination is multicast address RIP is using UDP port number 520. You can verify, you can expand this information. There is no any authentication method right now. You can see right now
Yeah.
there is no any authentication method. So let's go with the
Okay.
simple password authentication first. In RIP protocol, let's talk about simple password authentication. So R1 administrator is trying to configure authentication here. Authentication here. If R2, okay, let's verify routing table information. Show IP router. Yes, R1 is receiving all the information from R2. R2 loopback. You can also verify on R2. Show IP route rep. You can see R2 is receiving all route information from R. So now R1 administrator is trying to configure authentication here. R1 administrator, add R1 administrator. If R2 admin is required for routes updates, then you need to configure R2 administrator need to configure same authentication method, same authentication key. Let's prepare here authentication on R1. So for authentication, we can create keychain here. You will see here we can create
Yeah.
key. What is command? Keychain. You can give a name for this keychain. For example, I'm using CCIE. Here you can define key. So I'm using, for example, key 1. And the actual key is what? Actual key you can define with key string command. So this key ID
Picture.
and key string combination is what? Keychain. This key ID, key string combination is what? Keychain. So now key string CCNA 123. So this keychain you can apply on interface. So authentication you can apply on interface. So let's go to interface fast Ethernet 0/0. What is the command syntax? To apply authentication on interfaces in RIP protocol, command is IP RIP authentication. IP RIP
Okay.
authentication. If you type question mark, you can see You can first select your mode, then you can select your
Mode.
keychain. So what is mode? I told you, I told you RIP support, simple password authentication, and MD5 authentication, encrypted authentication, right? So if
Okay.
you verify here with mode command, if you type question mark, if you verify here, you have two options. You have
Uh,
MD5 and clear text authentication. Right now, I'm trying to configure clear text authentication. So I'm using text option. Now IP RIP authentication question mark keychain keychain. So
kitchen.
keychain is what? Keychain we are using CCIE. You can apply keychain here. Done. Done. We are using RIP
Oh,
protocol. Let's refresh our routing table with clear IP route asterisk command. We can refresh our routing table. Let's use this command here also. Clear IP route asterisk. Now,
okay.
if I'm trying to verify my routing table this time, I'm not receiving any route information from R2. See, I'm not receiving
Okay.
any route information from R2. Why? Because R2 is not using any authentication method. Yes, students. Clear my point?
Hmm. I get your point.
If you check here on R2 route, if you check show IP route, R2 is not receiving any route information from R2. So if R2 administrator is required update, if R2 administrator want update information from R1, he need to configure same authentication method and same authentication key. So let's copy keychain command here, show run pipe section key. So we can copy this, we can paste this keychain here, and this keychain you can apply on interface. And how to apply?
Hmm.
How to apply on interface IP RIP authentication. We have two options. Mode I'm using clear
Hmm.
text, then IP RIP authentication question mark. Here we have keychain, and keychain we are using CCI. Done. You can verify your routing table information. Okay, let's verify routing table information. And before verify routing table information, let's check here updates. Let's verify background information. Let's check updates. So see here we have latest packet. You can double click. You can double click and you can verify here now. Authentication is configured right now. And which method you are
Simple.
using? Simple password.
Simple.
And
Password.
what is
Yeah.
authentication key?
Ccnp want to say.
So if anyone trying, my point is what? If anyone trying to capture the packet in between R1 and R2, okay, he can verify. He can verify the actual key. What is the authentication key is traveling in between R1 and R2. So clear text authentication is not a good option. Okay, we can go with encrypted method. Okay, we can go with encrypted authentication method. So we can go with MD5.
I'm defined.
Okay, so this is what simple password authentication. The problem with the simple password authentication is what? Okay, let's verify root information first. See, R1 is receiving root information from R2 and R2 is receiving root information from R1 this time.
Oh, one.
So
Okay.
they have same authentication method and key. Clear this point?
Yes.
Now I don't want to use RIP here. Okay, let's try to advertise these networks, these routers in EIGRP protocol, for example. So router EIGRP autonomous system number 10.1.12.0 wildcard mask. We have loopback 2.2.2.2 wildcard mask. Network 192.168.20.0 wildcard mask. No auto summary. Let's go on R1. No router rep. No router rep. Router EIGRP 10.1.12.0 wildcard mask, network 1.1.1, wildcard mask, network 192, 168, wildcard mask. Wait, no auto summary. You can verify route information here with show IP route command, show IP route, yeah, GRP. You can see you are receiving route information from R2. You can also verify
Yes.
here, show IP route AIGRP. Yes, you are receiving route information from R1, and you can check here AIGRP protocol. And right now there's no any authentication. You can verify AIGRP, no authentication method. No authentication method. See, no authentication method. Now let's try to configure authentication on R1 first. R1 first. Yes, we have a keychain. And for RIP and EIGRP authentication, we need keychain. So yes, we have a keychain configuration. This keychain I will apply on interface. How to apply? How to apply interface fast Ethernet 0/0. Now command syntax is IP. Command syntax is little change, okay? If you are using RIP protocol, then IP RIP authentication. If you are using EIGRP protocol, then command is IP authentication. IP
Okay.
authentication. Now question mark. You can decide your mode, question mark, EIGRP protocol. What autonomous system number? 10. And if you type question mark here, you can see in mode. You can see in mode we have only encrypted
MD5.
authentication method. MD5 authentication. So MD5. Now IP authentication, keychain, EIGRP, autonomous system number. And what is keychain? CCI. So we are using authentication key, authentication method on R1. If you check your routing table information or neighbor table information, show IP, ARGRP neighbor. Right now, there is no any neighbor information. And right now, I'm not receiving any route information
Mm.
from R2.
Okay.
Now, let's go to R2 and you can see we are getting a message. What? Authentication failure. Authentication failure. So now let's configure authentication here. Before, before configure authentication, let's verify routing table and I'm not receiving any route information from R.
Mm.
Yes, we have a
Yeah.
keychain and we can apply this keychain fast Ethernet 0/0 IP authentication, authentication mode, AIGRP autonomous system number and mode we have MD5. Now IP authentication, keychain, AIGRP autonomous system number. And now keychain is what? CCI. Now see, we have a new adjacency. You see,
Mm.
you can verify neighbor table information first. You can verify routing table information now on both the routers, routing table information, and you can also verify packet information. So let's verify latest packet. And this time we are using authentication method. Authentication method. What? MD5. And you cannot verify authentication key here. See,
Okay.
you will so clear here.
Yes, clear.
This is what this is RIP and AIGRP authentication. OSPF authentication we can discuss tomorrow. Okay, dear.
Okay. Okay.
On your side, I think it's a morning time, right?
Yes, morning.
It's a 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.
6 a.m.
6 a.m.
43. 6 a.m. Yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, let's continue our session tomorrow. Okay, Jivansu.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I take care, dear. I'm sharing this recording in 1 hour.
Yes, no
Bye,
problem.
dear. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.